Here with Rhonda, Brian Hudson. We are here at UWI Graduate Center with everything D&I, diversity and inclusion, supporting. Why is this camera like? Work with my camera. Being able to offer advice to young persons on their career journey.
You're doing now is in alignment with that, or is it completely different to what you would have initially thought?
I absolutely love what I am doing now. Growing up as a kid, I remember my sister saying to me, I was 9 years old, and I said, you know what? I want to be my own boss. I'm really tired of these teachers giving me homework, homework, homework. But again, when you're that young, you don't know what that means, right? And I swore that I was going to be in HR for the rest of my life too, but then life happens, right? Working for Bank of New York Mellon in HR in the US, but I was on a work visa. And when the economy tanked in 2008, they weren't renewing a lot of visas, and mine was one of them. So I had to move back to Barbados. And that experience was really painful. But what it did do was it took me on the journey of rediscovering myself. What truly are my passions? What skill sets do I need to develop? And coming back home, that's how I started Beijing Fusion. And I just fuse all of my passions: fitness, wellness, human resources, and entrepreneurship. And I absolutely love what I do. So sometimes you have a plan for yourself, but life sometimes will throw you in a different direction, and you just seize that moment. But you have to be intentional with everything that you do. I'm glad that Rhonda shared that as well. So she said the word title. So write this book down, The Leader Who Had No Title by Robin Sharma. When I read that book back in the US, it changed my life to a point where I created my own title. I don't need to wait for a CEO title or to work for an organization to decide who I was going to be. The fact that I went on that journey of self-discovery, I call myself the Chief Purpose Driver. Yeah, I know what my purpose is, and I'm not driving to the destination, but I'm going on the journey, right? So realize that you need to start focusing on leading with your life. So you're not waiting on a job or a title to determine or define who you are. You literally show up as your best self, and you also add value in any of the spaces that you go into.
I have a question as well. I'm not sure if, well, you mentioned that you worked in the US. Have you worked overseas at one stage? Okay, so my piece of advice, coming from working in a small place like Barbados to being in a huge country like US or UK or anywhere in Europe, whatever, what's the major difference between the two, or like major lessons you learned while you worked outside of Barbados?
Culture. The culture is very different. I find that working in the US, it was just a different energy, and I found that people really worked. Yes, there may be issues within the organization, but we got things done, and people weren't necessarily. There was not a lot. Well, the spaces that I was in, there was a lot of nitpicking. I find that working in Barbados now, and when I think about HR and I think about the challenges within HR, people take so many things personal. Yeah, and it's just very different. So even if someone might have been mad at you, they're not holding on to it, and they're not like, I ain't working with she because no, right? So for me, I really flew. I learned a lot, I grew a lot, and I worked with people who actually wanted to see me develop. And that's what helped me to say, you know what, these spaces make sense for me to be in as well, because I love the idea of adding value to others. So for me, it is being able to think about the culture, what type of environment you would want to work in. And there is a big difference, and you just have to learn how to navigate.